Hello and welcome back to Bible Basics. This is the very first Bible Basics of the year, so I'm super excited. Today we're reading Matthew 12:38 through 50. And if you're keeping up with this channel, this is actually our third video covering Matthew 12. And that's because Matthew 12 just has a lot of verses, up to 50 verses. So it's just a lot of content to cover through, and I just want to make sure that everyone has enough material and enough commentary to make sure that they're completely understanding it. So I started Bible Basics because I wanted to have a resource for new believers who had never read the Bible before and didn't know where to start. That's why I started in Matthew instead of Genesis, just because I wanted to get a brief breakdown of who Jesus was, who God was, who disciples were, basically good foundation before we move on to some of the harder books. A brief history on Matthew, the author. He is one of the 12 disciples. He has a first-hand account of Jesus. His intended audience was a Jewish audience to convince him Jesus was the Messiah. He will quote the Old Testament frequently to back up his claims. In this section that we're reading, Jesus is going to toe-to-toe with the Pharisees, who, if you don't know, they were highly religious spiritual leaders and his main opposition. They were actually Jewish, so you would think that they would get along because coming from the same place, but no, not really. They did not agree on many things. Jesus didn't like how they taught and what they were teaching the people of Israel. So they were the ones who actually crucified him too. Spoiler alert if you didn't know. So in this section, I'm gonna cover two main points that Jesus is getting across. He talks about Jonah, how Jonah is a sign to the people, and I'm gonna give a brief history on him. And then he gives a story about kind of like a cleansing, which I think is very relatable to New Year's Day and New Year's in general. A brief history about Jonah. So Jonah was a prophet that God instructed to go to this town called Nineveh to get them to repent and to turn their ways because they're very wicked. What Jonah said was like, no, I'm good. I don't want to do that. So he just runs away. He goes on a boat far away, and suddenly the storm comes, and then all these people are wondering what's going on. Jonah's like, it's my fault. Throw me overboard, and everything will be okay. They throw him overboard. The storm calms down. A giant fish comes, and he's in there for 3 days and 3 nights. The fish drops him off at Nineveh, where he was supposed to go. And he's like, well, I'm already here. I might as well do what I'm supposed to do. So he goes. He preaches what he's supposed to preach. The town repents. The whole town, from like the leadership all the way to the bottom, they repent and they turn their ways and God forgives them. And that's something that's kind of like the background of what Jesus is using for one of the signs that they're asking for, which we'll read in a little bit. And another thing that Jesus talks about is this sort of cleansing where if someone has an impure spirit, the impure spirit leaves their body and then everything's tidy and orderly, but then the spirit has nowhere to go. So it comes back and it comes with seven more spirits that are worse than itself, and the person leaves being in worse condition than what it was. You can interpret this a variety of different ways. I decided to be kind of relatable with New Year's. So the way I take it is, let's say you make a New Year's resolution. You know, you want to start dieting, you want to eat healthier. Good New Year's resolution, perfectly fine. January 1st, you're really motivated. You're like, oh, I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to eat fruits and vegetables. I'm going to count my calories, all that good stuff. And you do it for a few weeks, but then motivation's not there. Opposition comes, obstacles get in your way, and you don't do it. And you end up being in a worse position than you were because you gave it a shot and it didn't work out. So you're kind of discouraged now. And when you want to start dieting again, you're like, what's the whole point if I'm just going to leave it? So you kind of end in a worse point than when you started. The way I interpret this and how I'm choosing to relate this to you guys is, in order to be successful with our cleansing, we need to have a plan or we'll end up worse than where we started. Basically, we have to have a plan for when hard times comes because motivation is just not enough. So let's say you're like, in this week, I'm going to take it step by step. I'm going to eat only fruits and vegetables and eat clean eating, or I'm going to count my calories, whatever it is. You know, you're going to have a starting point and you're going to have an intentional plan that you're going to follow. And it's going to make you be more successful in the long term. All right, so let's read the word. The sign of Jonah. Then some of the Pharisees and teachers of the law said to him, Teacher, we want to see a sign from you. He answered, being Jesus, A wicked and adulterous generation asks for a sign, but none will be given except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So Jesus kind of predicting his own death and kind of giving a preview of what's going to happen to him. The men of Nineveh will stand up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and now something greater than Jonah is here. Jesus basically saying the people of Nineveh were taught to repent, and they did. And now, if you don't repent, they'll be the ones judging you at the end of the time. The queen of the south will rise at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for she came from the ends of the earth to listen to Solomon's wisdom, and now something greater than Solomon is here. Solomon was one of the Israelite kings in the Old Testament, which we'll cover him more later. But what Jesus is saying is that if you're asking for a sign, the signs are already out there. There's signs all around you. There's signs in the Word. And if you don't want to listen to those signs, that's up to you at this point, because any sign that you're looking for, it's out there. You just have to find it. And also, what I took away from this too is like, we as Christians, we have to be signs to other people. It can't be like, oh, Jesus is all about love and then we're all hateful. Then the message is not going to get across. If we want people to follow Jesus, if we want people to be believers of Jesus, then we have to put in the effort ourselves as well to show and reflect Jesus' love and his message for the world as well. In this next section is what I was covering earlier with the impure spirits leaving the person's body. When an impure spirit comes out of a person, it goes through arid places seeking rest and does not find it. Then it says, I will return to the house I left. When it arrives, it finds the house unoccupied, swept clean, and put in order. Then it goes and takes with it 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, and they go in and live there. And the final condition of that person is worse than the first. This is how it will be with this wicked generation. So you can interpret it a variety of ways. I try to make it relatable with the New Year's. That's what I love about the Bible. It can be interpreted in a variety of different ways. And when you read it, it could hit you from a different angle. This time, it just made sense to me to go over for the New Year's resolution. But when you read it, which I encourage you to do, you might get something different, which is good. Let's keep reading. Jesus' mother and brothers. While Jesus was still talking to the crowd, his mother and brothers stood outside wanting to speak with him. Someone told him, Your mother and brothers are standing outside wanting to speak to you. He replied to him, Who is my mother and who are my brothers? Pointing to the disciples, he said, Here are my mother and my brothers, for whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. That's why a lot of believers in church refer to each other as brother and sister. Just thought I'd point that out. And that's the end of Matthew 12. We finally finished it. It took us 3 videos, but we did it. I hope you got something out of this. I hope you can find something relatable and something that God's speaking to you. I'm really excited for next week's as well because Jesus going to his parables, and some of his parables are really famous and they hit you in the right spots, I feel like. So I'm really excited to cover that next week. But thank you so much for watching. I'm so excited for the new year. So excited for what God has in store for this channel. Comment down below any questions you may have or any comments, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.